effective when we are engaged in the political process, and there's no time like the present. One of our main goals is effective advocacy through active participation from you. Those who stand for nothing will fall for anything. Our efforts to keep you engaged and informed as to the importance of current events happening locally and abroad started 2 years ago. Our number one goal is to make a difference. We need you. Join us at the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass. Catch us at www.thesmokingglasshour.com. You know, people always ask me why I do what I do. It was the teaching of my mother who taught me how to be strong and never waver when it comes to what I believe in as a man. She taught me that if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. Here at WMAD Radio, the goal is to stand for something and make a difference in the world while I still have that chance. Thanks to my mother for all she has done for me. Join the WMAD team where we can make a difference in the world today.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass. We are honored to have you as a guest tonight and want to thank each of you for your faithful support. Without further delay, allow me to introduce to you Mr. Baron Glass. Mr. Glass, take it away.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on Monday night, March 21st, 2016. I'm not real sure how I want to start this thing off tonight. And I'll tell you the reason why. Because I, as an individual who is very open-minded, very concerned about what's going on in 2016, not just in 2016, but all of my adult life when it comes to racism, prejudice, slavery, Jim Crow, and people who support those attributes. I had the opportunity to be riding in Marksville, Louisiana this past weekend. And every time I went by a yard or a house or an individual's piece of property, I saw a Donald Trump sign. And I was amazed to a certain degree. And it bothered me because every other leader, if you look at Louis Farrakhan, if you look at Al Sharpton, if you look at Jesse Jackson, if you look at Baron Glass, Aaron Hopkins, Corey Jackson, Dr. Cornel West, or anybody else that's out there who feels the need to say what they feel is right without being divisive, but talking about the evils of this country, you are considered a divider. Well, guess what? Tonight, the gloves are coming off. Why? Because people are tired of accepting the same old types of evil things that's going on in this world. When we look at Donald Trump himself, who happens to be the opposite of who we are or the individuals that I named, this guy can say whatever it is that he wants to say. He can do whatever it is that he wants to do, and he can get away with it. Well, guess what? Tonight I'm going back to the teachings of my mother, which always taught me every time I walked out of that house going to school, getting on that bus, that you make sure when you go inside that room that you let everybody know that you are somebody just like they are. So, Mr. Trump, tonight, we're going to talk about a lack of respect for the president that has created a beast known as Donald Trump himself. You see, because I myself am aware that there is an election this year. I know that everyone is entitled to their own individual opinion. But over the last year and a half, specifically the last 7 years, I have noticed some blatant forms of disrespect being directed specifically at President Barack Hussein Obama. The question that I ask, you should ask, is why? Is it because he is black? From highway billboards to other political figures pointing out their fingers in this guy's face, is it too much for a person of color to have this much power in this place we call the United States of America? What is the grand old party afraid of? What is the goal of the so-called Tea Party expressed? Every idea that the president has come up with, the Republican Party and the grand old party, which is the same, have stricken it down. Let a Republican political figure come up with the same idea and everyone is all over it. Tonight we're going to explore those questions. But before we get into that, I'm going to let you know that we're going to be joined tonight once again by Las Vegas, Nevada, Miss Nikki Bedrick, Colorado, Mr. Dave Lamont, Dallas, Texas, Mr. Aaron Hopkins, hopefully at some point Mr. Corey Jackson from Baltimore, Maryland, hopefully Miss Vanessa Ghazi from Houston, Texas, and our very own Pastor A.F. Riggins, Senior Pastor Founder, Real Life Church out of Houston, Texas. Now, after years of a stable life in this land, a businessman comes along to divide this country. A businessman by the name of Donald Trump. The hatred has reached the level of explosion, and you saw that in Chicago. People are beating and pushing each other over, as we witnessed in most recent Trump rallies. The question is he destroying the American democracy, or was it ever a democracy? This, my friends, is a question many people are asking even as we speak right now. As a businessman, I personally think he's stupid and he's a coward. He knows that he cannot ban all Muslims or build a Mexican wall. He knows that he cannot expel millions of illegal immigrants who came here to work for $6 an hour. After what happened in Chicago at a Trump rally on March the 11th, 2016, there was an opinion from an individual who is an American citizen, but born in Chicago of Mexican descent. She said, and I quote, "I am a first-generation born Mexican American from the Chicago area and proud of it. I am a registered voter, and ever since I could vote, I have never missed an election. This 2016 election has certainly been eventful from both parties. But as far as my opinion about Trump, he is conquering and dividing this country. It is pretty scary to think that so many people believe in his words and just follow him to supposedly make this country great again." She was also quoted as saying, "I am proud that the citizens of Chicago are united. They protested together against his rally. I just hope that this election year, people will wake up and vote. We know that presidents come and go, but the citizens will always be here. Should the American people themselves lose each other for one person, at the end of the day, we all know who is going to suffer when the person who becomes the president leaves that office. Certainly not Mr. Trump. When all of this is over, Trump himself will go back to his amazing life with his young wife. He might even take a trip in one of his yachts to some beautiful island, while the American citizens, on the other hand, will find themselves in a country full of people that, guess what, hate each other. People love violence by nature, but civilized people care about the future and look for logical solutions that would help them in the next generation to come. This is the difference between us and animals. The fact that we can use our brain. The whole world is laughing at us as Americans during this election. What's really crazy and shocking is that millions of people are supporting Donald Trump and his ideas. Of course, everyone we know is free to choose. But is this the free, brave, and noble America that we know? Some people may say that he is the right person to make America great again. But how is the question? By making more people hate this country, or by making Americans hate and beat each other? Hate only creates hate, and violence creates violence. Someone must stop this hatred, and this someone can be you, and you. Today, just today, we are hearing people requesting to discriminate against minorities and using the hate power to force specific ideologies to create generations who hate each other. We are used to hearing stuff like this third world countries who suffer from war and have a lack of education. Hearing this in the United States today makes me and others question everything about this country. The United States usually is an example of democracy, freedom and justice for the world. This country was built by immigrants, diversity of races and religion. The only race that matters in America should be the human race. Even wild animals have rights in this land. This, my friends, is what makes America great. If the American people have a problem, they should discuss it and fix it together as one nation. I personally, myself, hope no one will be able to change that, especially like this man we're talking about tonight, Donald Trump. Good afternoon, Nikki, Dave, and Aaron. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Baron. How are you?
I'm fine. Dave Lamont.
Doing good. How are you?
I'm fine. Aaron Hopkins.
Yes, sir. I'm doing wonderful, Baron.
Well, I'll tell you. We know that Trump is creating division. Aaron Hopkins, we talked about this before, so let me start with you. We talked about a lack of respect for the president back many months ago when we were over at Waco 4 and then Blog Talk Radio. Let's start when Senator Joe Wilson screamed during the State of the Union and called this man, or basically said, that's a lie. Let's start from that individual point and move forward. Let's talk about a lack of respect for the president, which has created this beast known as Donald Trump. Mr. Aaron Hopkins.
Well, Baron, I think the fact that you brought that up, it shows that, one, and this is me personally speaking in terms of Donald Trump and his divisiveness, I'm not going to give him the credit for dividing the country. I will, however, give him credit for bringing awareness to the level of division that has existed for quite some time. So the statement made by that senator in reference to the address that the president was giving at that time, that was another highlight, if you would, of the disrespect that was present. As we have witnessed the past several years, and of course during his presidency, we've seen different areas and levels of this disrespect manifest itself. And I would be a liar if I told you or said on this air that I'm not offended by it. However, I'm not surprised by it. So I think what we're doing and what we're able to do, Barrett, on this platform is point out not only that the disrespect exists, but face it in a way head on that people can either, to me, that you're either going to stand on one side. You're either going to stand on it, not necessarily right or wrong, but truth or falsehood. So there's a version of somebody's truth that we may not agree with 100%, But if it's based on facts, at some point, the person without the facts has to yield. I think that's what we're looking at when we're talking about Donald Trump. We're talking about somebody who doesn't, from my vantage point, doesn't deal with factual evidence in his presentation. He sets out, in my eyes, to do exactly what he's doing. And at some point, he'll stand back as if he has said nothing at all to excite the emotions of the people. So, that's why I said I don't want to give him that kind of credit. Not that that's not what he's trying to do, but I don't see him as that intelligent. I see him as using the influence of money and the influence of people's dissatisfaction to put himself on a pedestal that he's standing on.
Dave Lamont. Dave Lamont.
Sorry about that. Yes.
That's okay. Dave, talk to us a little bit about the lack of respect.
I'd like to go back a little further to January 20th of 2009, and most of us will know that that's Inauguration Day. While Barack Obama and his lovely wife were dancing and celebrating the inauguration of our first African-American president, a group of 15 Republicans were meeting in a restaurant called Caucus Room. And what was discussed in that meeting was basically an outline of a plan to create an insurgency. And in fact, Congressman Pete Sessions called it a Taliban-like tactic. And that was to deny the president any legacy. Now, to our knowledge, we have never seen any action like this ever done by either party towards a presidential candidate.
You still there, Dave?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So continuing on, basically, the plan was that they would filibuster or block any kind of legislation that would allow Barack Obama to have any form of a legacy. This was the project that was championed by Jim DeMint, who later went to a meeting with the Koch brothers. And he was with John Cornyn, who was a senator from Texas, and they held a debate. John Cornyn said basically we should allow the stuff to pass that we agree on and fight him on everything else. And Jim DeMint, who was from South Carolina, said, no, we have to block everything, whether we like it or not, because we cannot give this particular president, a legacy. So the disrespect started immediately within hours of his swearing in. And that is the caucus room meeting.
Okay. Nikki Bedrick.
Dave, I read the much of the same thing last night. I think the disrespect started, I know the disrespect started 2008. And kind of my comment on that is it's lasted through the 8 years. I was reading last night that Donald Trump has had about $1.8 billion or something free press. He's in fact, there's a move right now by one of the young black organizations against CNN to try to block the press that this man is getting. And he's getting free advertising. He's all over the place. And which leads me to kind of really look at it. It's been consistent through his presidency, the GOP obstructionism. It's been, he's been, at the highest levels. When you have at the highest levels of government, you have now a media that's backing it. It's just that public perception, that awareness is there all the time. And then you throw in the ring a year and a half ago someone like Trump. I mean, it's a recipe for a firebomb in America.
So, Nikki, you have an origin from another country by the way of Scotland. Have you been able to converse with anybody from back afar and get opinions and or comments about what they see and how they view us in 2016 as Americans with regards to Donald Trump?
Baron, I read the European press a lot, and one at government level, there is there's a concern of Western European governments having this man so close to the trigger, the nuclear trigger. Mm-hmm. In foreign policy, there's really talk in Europe and really respectful European press that this man could potentially be responsible for a third world war. Mm-hmm. We have a tenuous situation in Europe, all of the European countries, with the conflict in the Mideast. They're dealing with massive immigration, Syrian refugees, which we Americans created. So their countries are really in this kind of tenuous place. They fear Donald Trump as an international. They don't fear him. I think they fear what he's capable of in the international arena. They look aghast. There's all kinds. I've been getting all kinds of things from Scottish relatives about how he's ridiculed in the press. By the average man who can't really, who's sitting back and can't believe what's happening in America. It's a freak show. Mm-hmm. So yes.
Okay, so not only freak show, and I'm going to throw this at Dave, Aaron, and you, Nikki. Do you feel that many people now actually see when you have this humble man who has run for the office himself, has decided to do things according to what he felt would be in the best interest of the country, and all of this lack of respect and all of this disrespect for this man, do people, in your opinion, view this country as being somewhat hypocritical, if not a hypocrite? I'll start with you, Nick, and then I'll go to Dave, then back to Aaron.
Absolutely. It was really after the Second World War when America was pretty isolationist before the Second World War. And after that war, America kind of opened up to the West, and I think it was at that point that Western Europeans became really aware. Now, they had their own, it's a whole separate issue of what they were doing in Africa, but Western Europe was really aghast at Jim Crow and the in America that we had always perceived as there really was this idea in America, in Europe, as of the benign American. And really that opening up was one of the, at national level in America, one of the reasons why they felt they had to address their race problem. World image, mm-hmm. Because now the world was watching. It was kind of like it was all behind the veil before. The rest of the world didn't really know what was going on here. So I was reading that was one of they were really concerned about their world image. But, I just want to make the point, just while I'm on the European, Europe has a love affair with Barack Obama, mm-hmm. Okay? When Barack Obama became president, there's a little village in Ireland that has a population of 298 people. At one point, his great-great-great-grandmother, or his great-great-grandfather lived there. They called him a native son. He actually went, in all his graciousness, to visit this small village. Ireland, white Catholic Ireland, claimed them as their own. Kenya claimed them as their own. There is an absolute love affair in Europe with the people with Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. So Barack is kind of loved worldwide.
So
this is a race problem.
Mm-hmm. And you just explained something. Before I get into it, I'm going to go to Dave Lamont.
Yeah, I think we only need to look at America in this. Now, Nikki mentioned quite accurately why Europe has moved away from a lot of the race problems that they had, whereas Americans didn't. And the reason why Americans didn't is because we've been traditionally isolationists. And when you're an isolationist, when you're insular like that, you don't necessarily think nor even care to some degree what other people think about you. It's the hermit living in the hills outside of town. He doesn't care what everybody thinks about him. He does his thing his own way. And Nikki is right. The community out there they all came together, and they're trying to solve problems. And in the United States, we're the hermits on the hill. We sit there and we let a lot of our problems fester, and we'll just blatantly ignore it. So, I think that's the other side of the coin of it, the American perspective.
Mm-hmm. Aaron Hopkins.
Yeah, something Dave mentioned in his opening, he mentioned that the GOP, for the most part, was determined to not allow this president to leave a legacy or a positive legacy. And that's very important. And it made me actually look up the definition for legacy. I'm going to read it real quick. Legacy comes from the Latin verb legare, to appoint by last will, send as an ambassador. Originally, the noun meant ambassador or envoy, but soon shifted to mean the money and property the person leaves behind in his will. Many university scholarships are funded by the legacies of former students. In recent usage, political leaders are said to be concerned with their legacies, the historically significant achievements of their tenure in office. So, in other words, they're saying that they want this man to leave a legacy that would make his name almost be written out of the history books as opposed to a positive outlook on what he did and achieved in his tenure in office as president. So, from my perspective, I look at that and I say, in my mind, it does damage in a totally different way that they may not have considered. Culturally speaking, this man reaching the office of president, even in his first term, and let's just say that he would have only served one term, what it did to the hearts and minds in terms of achievement possibilities for Black America is you can't even put a measure on it. Regardless to what his policies were, whether everybody agreed with him or not, that just his reaching the White House and occupying the White House for the first 4 years, I'm telling you, has an astronomical value in terms of Black America and how they view him, how we as a community view him. So it's almost like there was a battle set up from the beginning, and I like the way Dave again opened up by saying these people were determined before he even took the oath of office to make sure that he would be a total failure. And we've heard the Rush Limbaughs of the world and others basically say they wouldn't care if the man was choosing what color pen he was going to sign a bill of law in. They were going to contest that. So it just shows that there's a difference between being disrespected from somebody unintentionally, but this is a projected and an intentional disrespect to basically make this man seem as if he is the worst president that ever held office, which we all know that's not. It's totally inaccurate.
So Hodge, let me ask you this. We know that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, he was a minority leader at the time, indicated that his number one goal was to make the president legacy a failure. Okay. If we look at what has taken place from logical, intelligent-minded African Americans such as you, myself, Corey Jackson, Pastor A.F. Riggins, Dale Summers, and many others, and not just blacks, but just logical, intelligent-minded people. Let's look at this thing or explore this thing. We have been taught from kindergarten through 12th grade on through college, master's plus 30, Juris Doctorate or PhD or whatever the case may be, that the office of the president or the Oval Office, even if you dislike the candidate, him or herself, him in this case, that you should always respect the office itself. So when you look at the teachings of this particular country, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all of these other things, and now we look at it as if there is no respect for this particular office, How does black America, along with other Americans who want right, who want justice, who want liberty, how can we look at this thing and say, well, if they're not going to disrespect, because an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, some people believe that. Some people don't believe in turning the other cheek. But for those who do, how can we teach our younger kids, the millennials, who do not agree with what the baby boomers went through, with regards to show them respect even if they don't show you respect? So how do we delve off into even changing the dynamics of the respect versus disrespect? I throw it at you first, Dave, then I go Aaron, then I go back to Dave, then we end up at Nikki.
Baron, that's an excellent question, but it's unfortunate that based on America's history and the history of denial, Dave also mentioned that, the denial in respect to things that are not popular to bring up and discuss, whether it's racism, sexism, classism, what we're actually living through and witnessing are we're going through the process of these things coming into fruition, and the way we have failed to deal with these realities. So the millennials have taken a stance that does not have the fear attached to it that our generation and generations before us, Aaron, had in terms of not wanting to upset the status quo or go against the grain. The millennials have taken the stance again that they're not really concerned with asking to be respected. They have taken a look at what we went through, and they determined that they would not go through it the same way that we had. So it's almost at the level, well, it's not almost at the level, it is at the level of explosion if it continues in the direction that it's going. And I believe that there are those, political and otherwise, that have interest and investment in that very thing happening. Is that the result that we want? Of course not. Mm-hmm. But you just have to think of it on the level of these things, and we've had these discussions recently. There was a reason why the prison industrial complex was created years before things that we're witnessing now started to take place. Mm-hmm. I believe it was a calculated move on the Clintons, both President Bill Clinton and Senator Hillary Clinton, to invest in the future. Mm-hmm. A future that is negative on one end, but positive on the end of those who were the financiers, so to speak. So it's a very dark hour that we're approaching, but we're approaching it nonetheless. Hopefully, Baron, with these kind of discussions that we're having, we might be able to lessen some of the sting, but history teaches us and tells us that some of this stuff is inevitable, and we have to, as best we can, if we can involve ourselves in being on the side of right. When I say right, it's not my right, your right, or anybody else's right, but that's based on truth. I think that's really all we have to stand on.
Mm-hmm. Dave Lamont.
So I view this treatment very similar to the fact that your culture's been ripped from you, and you've been kind of forced to live in a world that you were never meant to live in. So the hard part is, and I'm a big advocate of history, and I think that if you don't teach history, if you don't teach what we did to African Americans, what we did to Indians, what we did to all of these different peoples throughout the history of the United States, if we don't teach that, and especially the ugly parts, then we're doomed to continue this legacy that we've built up right now. We're not going to get anywhere. African American children and other minority children are going to continually feel like they're being dumped on by some sort of overwhelming godlike figure in authority that hates them. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to learn how to be able to get along unless we go over that history. A history that, I remind you, places like Texas, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, are trying to erase. Rather than calling it a slave trade, they're calling it the triangle trade. And that alone should tell you what we're up against. That education is the key. You know me, I'm always about education. I'm always about teaching history. And I think if we don't, it goes to the nationalism of the Republican Party. And I discussed this in one of my blasts where I said that the Republican Party has turned into a nationalist party. And part of nationalism is highlighting your country as being exceptional. You know the term American exceptionalism. Well, American exceptionalism, to me, is embracing the fact that we had a colored history, a sordid history, and we're trying to overcome that history and make ourselves better. But to the Republicans, to the people that we are here having to oppose, to them, American exceptionalism is denial. Denial that we're treating people differently. Denial that they're disrespecting this president. Because I remember back in 2003, 2004, and 2005, the same Republicans who were talking disrespectful to this president were saying that you cannot talk disrespectful. You have to respect the office of the president, no matter who's in it. Well, today they're doing they're doing worse than what Democrats did. I mean, the worst thing I ever heard George Bush be called was stupid. But I've heard that with Obama. I've seen these horrific images. You know, him in like an African witch doctor outfit, talking about Obamacare. You know, comparisons to monkeys. I mean, just vile stuff that makes you want to throw up. And then they sit there and turn their back on history and say, yep, America's the greatest country in the world. I don't get it.
Nikki?
Oh, Dave, I'm so with you. One of my great passions is history and psychology and getting to the underneath of things. You must get to the underneath of things. But, you know, there's a kind of line that runs through history, and it says history is written by the victor. History is written by the victor. And that is the truth. And American history has been written by the victor. As Aaron was talking on the legacy and the deep meaning of what a legacy is, they want to write Obama out of the history, like he never happened. Like he never happened. That's what denying a man his legacy is. Like he wasn't there, he never happened. And I mean, what an evil intent right from the beginning. And it has its base. I think what we have with Trump supporters, okay, is this toxic white masculinity and fear is very, very worse. And if we're not careful, it's going to be black toxic rage in the cities. And I really, really believe that it's going to be that clash. I heard Aaron, unless something is done. I think if we look at, and I don't think that there's any hope immediately for America to do this. Look at what happened in South Africa. And they had a leader of the stature of Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela, I'm sure in his many, many, many years of prison, because he was really a kind of revolutionary in his early years, and maybe all of those years in prison and the thinking. But when he was released and that country was in that state of crisis, I think that I've been involved in what's happened in apartheid since I was a teenager, but there was the expectation there was going to be the pathological fear of the white man was going to come true, that the oppressed black man was going to rise up and seek his revenge. And Nelson Mandela, with that Truth and Reconciliation Council or committee, really staved that process off. And what it was, I mean, in my church we had this, confession, reconciliation, and restitution. I mean, it's the basis of really any change of heart. You first have to know there's a problem. I think the problem in America is there's this there's that pathological fear there's a pathological fear of black man. I think it derives from slave days, fear of the black body, the prowess of the black body, which any psychologist with any kind of background will tell you the emasculation of that black man was the punishment meted on him. Let's emasculate him, let's castrate him, let's burn him, this breaking that Ta-Nehisi Coates says so well, the breaking of the black body. And I think those two pathological fears, I was trying to count how many generations in slavery, just given the 1600 mark. For 25 generations, give or take, that's been passed down from generation to generation, generation to generation. And I want to say one concluding thing with President Obama. I was reading last night an author, a black author called, I really want to credit, I don't want to take credit for this great comment, Bell Hooks. And I was looking, and I knew I was looking for something I didn't quite know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the last two sentences of her book, the book is called, I really recommend it, called Revealed Soul, Black Men and Masculinity. It said this, he said, a free black man at home in his body, able to wear his sexuality and manlyhood with a life-affirming agency is the radical outlaw that this nation fears. And I think that's Obama. He neither apologizes for his intellect, for his grace, for his physical beauty, for his love of his family. He is, Obama's cool. And I think that here is a man in his full powers, and he is unapologetic, and I think that that's what America fears.
Okay, let's look at what you and Dave talked about regarding education. And for years, people have preached education. And now, every time you look at it, education and healthcare, which are two of the main sources for survival, they are looked upon as being first on the chopping block. Aaron Hopkins, when you look at education in the black community, is this one of the reasons, or does this basically confirm or put the nail in the coffin why history is not being taught in schools? Because when you educate people based on their history, it allows them not to feed into or buy into this system that says that, okay, what we did was not that bad. We used the Bible to justify all of these things, that of how we use Christ to justify slavery. We use Christ to justify Jim Crow and all these other things. Do you see any correlation there, Mr. Hopkins?
Absolutely, Baron. And Nikki illustrated it very well when she mentioned that the history is written by the victor. I would use the term conqueror, because we have been basically conquered, and especially as black males, which goes along with what Nikki and David both said. What was attempted to be done to this sitting president politically is identical to what was done to us physically. Now, the outcome, of course, was not probably what was desired, because this president has a very strong resistance to a lot of the stuff that probably you and I might not have fared as well with. That's just being honest. Another thing that I think has brought a lot of anger out towards this president by those, whether they're in the GOP or other areas of politics, he did not take the approach or the stance that many. I'm going to use Tiger Woods as an example. This is not to offend anybody of biracial lineage. He could have easily have taken the stance that he is not, quote unquote, a black man or a black president. That probably would have played into the mindset that many wanted him to go in. He simply, has postured himself as a black male occupying the White House. And to go along with that, I think one of the things that he ran into early on in his presidency, and I've said this before, Baron, In terms of a quote-unquote traditional politician, I have never considered him to be a politician. Simply because some of the, just his humility and his decency, I don't see him ever necessarily bowing down to the political game. I'm not saying he has not had to be political in his term of president, but I'm telling you, and I think most would agree, when you think of a politician, you think of, people who have negative reputations, whether they're in the Senate, any area of politics. It's a shame and it's unfortunate, but the reality is we don't think honestly when we talk about politics. And that goes along with what Dave mentioned, the legacy that America has in its state of denial. You have people saying greatness on one end, and you have people across the continent saying, wait a minute, your greatness has put to death a lot of people in the name of greatness. So, again, living through benefits or reaping the sorrows of this American history and legacy. So, as far as education is concerned, Baron, absolutely. You cannot tell, again, we'll use the term millennium. You cannot tell this group of youth coming along that what has been allowed to is going to happen this coming generation. They're not going to stand for it. Not necessarily say they want to have a violent approach to not allowing it to happen, but I'm telling you, and we're watching it, there is a total different posture in this youth, and I think we may want to pay attention, not in fear, but in respect to them, because they can very easily be the reason why a lot of this stuff is actually fixed in the next coming years.
Right. Well, Aaron, you are exactly right. Now, I want to make sure, but see, sometimes I personally feel like I shouldn't have to explain what it is I'm saying because logical people understand. And you're right. When I say that the younger generation is not going to tolerate the things that my mother and the 60s generation, accepted. Because the rappers in the 80s, they told you that. They are not afraid to stand up for what they feel is right. Why? Because they were born into freedom. They didn't have to fight for it. So they already know what it's about. When we look at the topic, okay, the beast has been born by the GOP. Dave Lamont, how is it that you think that the GOP has created this beast by allowing all of this disrespect starting from the date that you mentioned previously up until now? How did they create that, or how did they add to that, because they were a major component regarding this? Tell us what you think about that.
Well, I think it all goes back to the Nixon administration and the whole Southern strategy. And, Pat Buchanan still talks about it today, that the Republican Party needs to embrace the white element of the country. So I still think that they believe in the efficacy of the Southern strategy. Whether they're winning or losing on it, they're going to die by their own sword. So I think it started with the whole shift after the Civil Rights Act was passed, where the Southern Democrats, the conservative Democrats, changed slowly over to Republicans. First they started out as Democrats. Those were your Nixon Democrats. And then they were called the Reagan Democrats. And then they were just called Republicans. And I think this is still the Southern strategy being played out, except I think we've reached the apex of it. We have a candidate that is openly embracing the results of that Southern strategy, the thing that we've been taught since I was a child. I grew up in the South. I grew up in Florida. So I know firsthand how the dog whistle terms were expressed, the whole proudness of being a Reagan Democrat, that sort of thing. I was a Republican up until 2002. So I can speak from experience that that has been ingrained in every Southern white boy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just the apex. This is they've reached the top of the mountain, and this is the end game, I think, for the Southern strategy.
Mm-hmm. Nikki, let me ask you this. We know that Donald Trump's mother, she's an immigrant from, of all places, Scotland. And his father's
we
family.
don't claim him.
Yeah, his father's family immigrated from Germany. Now, we know that pretty much there's nothing new about Trump's controversial character. But we find that now he's taken it to the next level since he has decided to run for the president. Let's look at some of the divisive things. Okay, retweeting fascist comments or quotes like Mussolini, imitating a disabled journalist, calling Mexicans rapists, requesting to build a huge wall between Mexico and the United States, asking to ban 1.5 billion human beings from entering the United States because they are Muslim, requesting to put a special ID on American Muslims, and more outrageous ideas that are against the Constitution and American morals. Does this not, in fact, line up with a lack of respect for not only the president, but the Constitution and the fabric of this country today? Talk to me, Nikki.
Absolutely. I believe I think that the American Psychological Association just came out recently, and they refrain from trying to diagnose public personalities, but they have, because they feel the danger in Trump is to this narcissistic megalomania that he has. I really believe that Trump probably itself hasn't really given a thought to what is actually. I think he's intoxicated by his power,
mm-hmm.
and he doesn't have a plan. And part of that personality. I mean, people that, generally people that don't know the history, and I just look at Hitler somewhere during the war and the Holocaust, and that time in Europe cost 60 million lives. Okay, it wasn't only the Jews, it was the Gypsies, but the way Hitler came to power is you had a kind of disillusioned. Germany had lost the First World War. They'd been treated, the Versailles Treaty kind of stripped them of national dignity, arms, all of these things. Unemployment was rampant. In comes Hitler, okay? And his first preaching to the people was, we're going to make Germany great again, okay? And it was an appeal to this nationalism, okay? Now, you didn't have okay, so it's appeal to the nationalism. That's why I feel that Trump hits, the nativism, white America without blacks, without Spanish, without people of color, without anybody. So he first did that. Then he got himself, the lightning I see to the protesters, okay? He whipped up such a fervor at his rallies. He was going to give everybody jobs, and Germany was going to be great again. And he armed, we call them the brown shirts. He put brown shirts on a lot of these, usually the younger ones. And they were now his civil police. And they were the ones that anyone that had a protest was beaten, mauled. These were the ones that now created the kind of civil disobedience. Okay? So that happened. Then the scapegoat, because deeply passionately had hate for the Jews. He got a scapegoat, like Trump has a scapegoat. Anyone of color, anyone that isn't white American, basically. And then he turned his population on them, which ultimately led. But before then, it was the intellectuals. He shut down the intellectuals. They went to the camps first, the thinkers. So they went. University presidents, they went. Anyone that was handicapped was put in camps. Gypsies, Jews, anyone that was other. And it took about a 7-year process. It finally came to power. Okay, in when he was able to consolidate the power of that office, then he really went to town. But it was a process to get there, and that's why I see the danger of Trump is. I don't think Trump has a policy. I don't think I don't think he has a plan for the country. I think what he's intoxicated in his own power trip.
Mm-hmm.
It's frightening. I mean, he's a very frightening, and I agree with Dave and Aaron. I think he's brought to a head this deep DNA kind of cancerous racism that exists in America, and he's brought it to a head. I agree with Dave. It's maybe the end of the Southern strategy, but nevertheless, it's sitting there, and I feel my father, my grandfathers, all in that war. Okay, I feel like I'm hearing the stories of Hitler all over again.
Mm-hmm. So, as a native Scotland, how does that make you feel when this guy is talking about building walls that prevent immigrants, which you would have been one, your grandparents would have been one, to come over into this country, work hard, pay your debts to society, and become a successful citizen of this country? How does that make you feel hearing that?
That was a hard one for me, Brian, because I don't feel I've been here a long time. I never took citizenship. I never wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of those conscientious objectors.
Mm-hmm.
You pay my taxes, entirely legal, children here, all of these kind of things, but I never wanted it.
But let's look at it from those other people that are impoverished. All they want is just a fair shake at life. I want to come to America. Okay, you have this man, this separatist. Go ahead.
It's always been for the poor. I mean, doesn't the Statue of Liberty and the great exception has been the black population has never been invited to join, and they were there before anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Here in 1600, So I'd say, let me just put that as a side. I think America has always been regarded, not now, but in the European eye, as it's somewhere you could go and you could work hard and you could, escape poverty. You could, Europe has those class systems, that how you speak, your accent's going to determine where you're going to be placed. They don't have a racist society, but they have a class society.
Mm-hmm.
If I were back in England and let's say I won the lottery, it'd take 4 or 5 generations before my kids could go to one of those really, kind of posh private schools,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that, your place in society there, and you knew you could never get out of it.
Right.
And so that's what America offered, and the Hispanic coming, from Mexico or other Latin countries and escaping oppression, and even the refugees today.
Mm-hmm.
America's always been that idea of some kind of place where you could go and you could, a safe haven. Statue of Liberty, give me your weary, give me your sick, give me your poor,
Mm-hmm. So, go ahead, finish, Nikki.
No, so I was going to say is an immigrant was probably left some real dire situations and some horrors, and to come here and be told they're going to be deported or horrific. And your family and your children and your ties. In many ways, it's like taking up the black African from Africa. Let's unroot you now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's break up your families. It seems that through white American history, that is a theme, Baron. That's a theme.
So Nick, when you look at then and now, okay, some such as myself, Aaron Hopkins, and many others believe that the Bible tells us that there's nothing new under the sun. What has been is now, what is now has been. Taking what you just said, we know that some things that existed back then, they exist now only in a different format, or they come to you in a different way. If that be the case, then why is it a problem when people such as people of color, those who have struggled, when they say that America is not as great to them as it is for some of those other ones who are privileged? Why can't people understand that because you didn't see it does not mean that it didn't happen?
Oh, I think it's, Baron, how I feel. It's generational, 25 generations of them. Racism.
Mm-hmm.
It started from the time the very first black flag was brought here. I mean, you take a people, you uproot a people from their native land and culture, you obliterate their history, you obliterate their families, you never allow them families, you emancipate them, and you brutalize them for 250 years. Then you release them to that into Jim Crow, where there's this deference that's always. I mean, the Jim Crow etiquette is horrific. The laws are horrific, but the etiquette is horrific.
Mm-hmm.
A black woman would never be addressed with her name. A black man couldn't look a white man in the eye. He must always be subservient.
Mm-hmm.
He must never be contentious with a white man. I mean, all of these offenses, right up until the 50s, Emmett Till, what was that, 1955?
Mm-hmm.
All of these offenses, and living in that random violence, I mean, there was random violence at whim that the white man could practice on any black body he chooses, rape his women. I mean, it's just, that's only 60 years ago, Baron.
Right. And I feel your pain.
Persisted
Mm-hmm.
in this country, and only began to be addressed in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I'm European, so for me, history's long. There's buildings in my hometown that were built 1,000 years ago. America is a drop in the 50 years is a drop in the pan. I mean, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was being done 50 years ago.
Most recent history. Aaron Hopkins. Right. Aaron Hopkins. Based on what Nikki is saying, and I'm going to bring this to you and Dave because you guys are just a tad bit younger. When you look at this thing of disrespect to the President of the United States, when you look at this thing of disrespect that has now created Donald Trump, can that be contributed to a lot of the young guys that are out on the street, that are minding their own business, they're rolled up on by somebody in authority, they are dressed in the wrong fashion, and as a result of that, somebody saying that there was disrespect, and as a result, there ends up being a killing. We know Trayvon Martin. We know all of those issues. Can that be contributed to? Some are saying, the millennials, in fact, are saying, okay, you don't respect the person that we look up to, then we're not going to give you that respect. Is it any correlation to that, in your opinion, Aaron Hopkins? Then I'll bring in Dave Lamont.
I would have to say yes, man. Again, if we listening to Nikki, one of the things that should become crystal clear by now is we are actually watching, living through a time that reminds of the promote from the went out to kill off boy or male children under. And so when you're talking about, here it is, a man who would have been fought against at every turn just in for office, let alone reaching the office and becoming the president. You have the audacity to become president when we didn't even intend for you to be able to walk and carry yourself as a man in this country.
Uh-huh.
So we're talking about totally going against the grain of white supremacy, and as Dave put it, the southern, the old southern mentality that we see now in politics rearing its head again. These were things that were not supposed to even be a topic of discussion. We're sitting here talking about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
The idea to totally break the mentality of this particular man that he would never even reach a state to be considered a true human being, a man of respect. So what Nikki just said again, we can't deny this. We can't deny the mistreatment and the history of what happened to us in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that denial, we are now having to witness a Donald Trump, who, yeah, he is in fact the apex or the creation or the result of that disrespect that he did not create himself. He on that beneficiary in that I can take the disrespect that's been present all along, and I can stand on a platform, and I can make who think that who don't necessarily have to come out and say things like that can build on that platform. Well, we're witnessing. We're witnessing people who have been in hiding for a long time, but that mentality has been. They just didn't feel. They feel now that okay, we can go ahead and try to say what they've been thinking because we have a spokesperson now.
Okay, Aaron, you were kind of fading in and out. I'm going to give you an opportunity to get your phone clear because I want to make sure everybody understand the intellect from whence you come. Dave Lamont, when we look at this respect versus disrespect, do you feel that there's any correlation between the lack of respect, the disrespect toward the president, and what's going on with the millennials out there minding their own business and ultimately ending up facing somebody in authority and ending up in a bad way? Any correlation?
No, I don't think so. I think it largely is middle class white people who are feeling that middle class slipping from their fingers from 40 years of Reagan economy, and it's slipping through their fingers, and they don't want to blame the source that's actually causing the problem. So they've taken the other things that they've been taught, that racial hatred or that racial disrespect, and they're throwing it on the people that they think are the cause of the problem. And the millennials are the children of those kinds of people, and it's created an apathy amongst them that all they're concerned about is their future right now, which is justifiable, and they kind of want to dismiss themselves of all of this, but they don't know how to do it in a way that's constructive because they've been brought up with the idea that their parents are losing the battle, and that's kind of where I think the correlation is.
So when we look at all the facts that are basically out there, we know that Trump is really, really, really anybody that comes at him, he's attacking their religion. He even attacked, I believe, as recent as last week, Mitt Romney. He's attacked everybody that he could. My question is this, but before I do that, we're looking at about 8:38 p.m. Central Standard Time. You're listening to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass. Tonight we're joined by Nikki, Bedrick, Dave Lamont, Aaron Hopkins. When we look at all of this stuff that's going on, this disrespect, Aaron, I want to bring you back in. I know you're on mute, but I want to bring you back in. You're fine. I just want to make sure that people understand exactly what it is that you're saying. When we look at this disrespect, not just for 1 month, we're talking about for years, and as a result of social media, it has exposed a lot of things that people can see on a minute-by-minute basis. When we look at this disrespect, Aaron, I'm going to start with you. Do you see this changing anytime soon in the near future, going in a positive direction rather than a negative direction? If not, what is it that you think people such as yourself, Dave, Nikki, and a host of others out there can do to try to offset? Because eventually, I've always been told that you continue to put pressure on the pipe, it's going to burst. You chop at a tree long enough, eventually it's going to fall. You put water on the heat long enough, it's going to boil. Talk to me, Aaron. Do you think it's going to change at any point in time? If not, what can we do to try to make the change?
Unfortunately, man, I don't think it's going to change, not immediately. I think it's going to take some time because it did not get to this point overnight. However, I think that as long as there are cooler heads present, eventually cooler heads will prevail. But we're going to continue to see some things because this is, again, we have to realize this is a professional antagonist at work, bringing out the emotions of the people who have for some time been able to stand behind the fence, stand behind a wall or behind a door, and make things happen without having to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
So now that there's spokesmen out front bringing their mindset and their ideas out in the open, we're seeing the result of that. So I think that over time, people will be able to stand back and realize that, the worst thing in the world is to be forced into a situation that you didn't know you were being forced into. And I think that, again, there's going to be some people that are going to stand back and look and say, wait a minute, maybe I don't really represent what this person is saying or thinking, and maybe there's an alternative way of looking at it.
Okay, Dave Lamont. I know we have to give Dave time to kick in. Dave, you out there?
I am.
Okay.
You okay?
Yeah. Did you hear the question, or do you need me to repeat it?
Could you repeat it for me?
Well,
on my phone.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about this disrespect, and do you see it changing in any time in the near future? And if not, what is it that we can do to try to offset the negativity regarding the disrespect to this group of people known as the millennials? Because we already know, it's been stated, that they are not going to put up and continue to accept what is taking place. And eventually, things are going to happen. Well, what do you think we can do to offset it?
Well, I don't see an end to it anytime soon. We've got a presidential candidate, Donald Trump, that basically is, when the Republicans are screaming that we have a $19 trillion debt and we have to cut everything, he's proposing a xenophobic, racist wall that will cost $25 billion and then $25 or more billion every 7 years to maintain, plus the idea of manning it and the law enforcement budget that would need to patrol that. And people are accepting that. And I think it's going to take some sort of massive folly. We've had it before in the United States. It's called the 80. There's this theory called the 80-year cycle, where you have a boom, a bust, a great war, and social strife. And that's basically, you had your boom and the bust in the 1850s and early 1860s. Then you had the Civil War, and then you had the social strife of Jim Crow. In the 1900s, you had, 80 years later, in the 1920s, you had the boom of the 1920s. You had the bust of the Great Depression, World War II, and then you had the social strife of civil rights. And I think we're going through that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Radio personality Tom Hartman put out a book called The Crash of 2016, and I recommend everybody read that because it talks about this cycle. And right now, what we're staring down the barrel of is the economic bust, war, and social strife of this cycle. And the reason why I'm saying it is The Economist said that one of the greatest economic threats of the century so far is the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States. This is not a liberal organization that's saying this. These are conservatives that are saying this. These are people who are all about money. So we are looking down the barrel of a possible war, but definitely some sort of social strife. And unfortunately, because we seem to be locked into this, part of the theory is, when the last people die from the last Great War, the next Great War starts. And right now, we are seeing the die-off of the people who lived through the racism, the horrors, the economic strife of the Great Depression, rise of fascism, and World War II on into the civil rights struggles.
Right. Exactly right, Dave Lamont. Exactly.
Yeah.
Dave, if you don't mind, we're looking at about 14 minutes left, and I know that we have a line full of callers out there. So let me open up the lines and see if there's any caller that's out there listening tonight who would like to engage in the conversation. You may do so at this time. I'll pause for a moment. Any callers? Judging by ways and action, we'll continue. Nikki, we're looking at about 13 and a half minutes. Tell us what you'd like to see happening in the coming days with regards to getting the message out to dump Trump. And I literally mean dump Trump. I think he's a coward, and I think he is lacking leadership. I think he is very bad for the country. And I also heard somebody say earlier that he's also bad for the entire world. Miss Nikki Bedrick from Las Vegas, Nevada. Talk to us.
I don't know what to. I think I mentioned earlier about. I see young organizations like Color Change, Black Lives Matter, Asada's Daughters, and these young people are really at the ousted state prosecutor Anita. Oh God, give it to me.
Right in Chicago. Mm-hmm, yeah.
Just got Tom McGinty out. Okay, they're working. They're behind a lot of this. They were really the ones behind or work with students in Chicago. Stop Trump coming into Chicago. We just saw them again. Bernie said there's this kind of like grassroots thing that is good. It's nonviolent, but man, it's active. It's active, and it's beginning to do things at these levels. The stopping the traffic going to the protest,
Did we lose you, Nikki? I think we probably did. I'll bring her back up when she comes back. Dave Lamont, what is it that you'd like to see in the near future regarding galvanizing people to go out and specifically dump Trump?
Well, you know me, I've had this consistent theory that Trump is nowhere near popular as people claim he is. He hasn't won a majority in any state. So I tend to downplay what needs to be done to defeat Trump. I think the Republican Party is working pretty hard to try and move into a position to dethrone Trump. We'll know in the next few weeks, now that Rubio is out. He was the number 3 guy, and it is the possibility to show whether or not Trump is truly popular or not. And in fact, what we see in the primaries is there's only one candidate who has ever gotten above 50% in an election. That was Ted Cruz. So I maintain the hope, the hope at least, that I think it's from solid ground, that Trump is not nearly the wave candidate that his supporters seem to think. So I think Trump, if he makes the nomination, it's going to be an embarrassment. That even if he's running against Hillary Clinton, and most of us here have problems with Hillary Clinton, I think if even running against Hillary Clinton, we're going to see one of the larger margins of victory, but it's not going to be for Trump. I think America is going to wake up when we get into the general election, and if Trump is the Republican nominee for that general election, we're going to see the Democrats excoriate them, just wreck them on every front, every inconsistency. Right now, nobody is challenging him in any way. The only person that came close was Marco Rubio in one debate, and he had Trump pinned against the rope. Trump is not as strong as people think, and I want people to have faith. I want you to if you're a praying man, pray. But I think it's in the bag. I think we're going to defeat Trump by exposing him.
Yes, indeed. That's Mr. Dave Lamont, screened from the center. You can catch him on Wednesday nights at Blab. David, tell us what time your show, I know you have one already scheduled. What time your show is on Wednesday night?
It's at 9 p.m. Mountain Time.
9 p.m. Mountain Time.
Yeah. Yep. I just open up with my with a little rant, and then I open up the seats and let people argue with me all they want.
Okay, I see that you have another individual that's out there that's always arguing with you, who does not have a problem doing so. We also joined tonight by one of my great colleagues, Mr. Aaron Hopkins from Dallas, Texas. Aaron started out with me over there at Waco 4, then on to Blog Talk Radio, and now we're here. One of the most intellectual young guys that's out there, along with Dave Lamont, always trying to bring balance to the table. I'm going to bring it to you, Aaron, and then we're going to close it out. Give us your final commentary.
Okay, well, with everything that's been said tonight, and I appreciate Nikki, of course, and Dave for what they bring to the table. It's when we're talking about a subject like this, and you have to look at disrespect that is blatant. It makes you stop and reflect on, some of the things that over the years you may have been involved in that you didn't realize how it would play out. I got into politics later in life. Never really been I would say, not necessarily a supporter of any particular party. I've always tried to stand on values and integrity. So looking at, again, that's why I always refer to President Obama as a person in politics, but not necessarily a politician. And it's unfortunate that in this day and time, with the climate that we are dealing, that a person that stands for decency may not be considered the best politician or a person who would serve everybody's needs. But if nothing else, I think this particular president has proven that to be totally wrong. There are people that probably did not. As a matter of fact, I saw something the other evening where a person who did not start out as an advocate or a fan of President Obama, after Obamacare was, or the Affordable Health Care Act, as it's properly named, was enacted, that he was able to receive health care that he was not afforded prior to that. So, looking back at what this man's real legacy would be, even with the intention that his legacy would be negative, the facts will prove that he has been, in my view, the best president that this country has seen. So, yes, there's a Donald Trump out there who intends to probably undo everything this man has done, but we'll see.
Hello?
We'll see what comes of it.
Yeah, hold on, caller. Finish up, Aaron. Go ahead, Aaron.
We'll let that caller. Yes, we'll let the caller go ahead and chime in. But
okay, we got about 7 minutes. Go ahead, caller. You out there, caller? Okay, Aaron. Well, we've been listening tonight. Tonight's title, Lack of Respect for the President Has Created a Beast, the beast known as Donald Trump. We've been talking to co-host Miss Nikki Bedrick, Dave Lamont from Screens from the Center, and Mr. Aaron Hopkins. I was hoping that Mr. Corey Jackson, Vanessa Ghazi, and Aquila Riggins, Pastor Riggins, Dr. Riggins, could come in and join the conversation. We have tried our best to bring this subject matter to the forefront. If you are for disrespect, then you can have Trump. If you are for division, then you can have Trump. But if you are for something else other than that, I understand Nikki is back. Nikki, you're back. We got about 5 minutes left. You want to finish your closing statement?
No, I just take 2 minutes.
Okay.
The whole topic tonight is about disrespect to President Obama, and I think I've really tried to emphasize on the rest of the world. President Obama is respected as a statesman. A statesman. Think about what that is. Now, if you're president, you go outside of your own place. He's regarded as a diplomatic statesman, and a statesman of stature. Because of the Iraq War, he signed a nuclear arms treaty with Iran. That's what statesmen do, And I just want to say that I think that the whole backlash towards him, just looks like a huge conspiracy. But I think what this country really suffers from, I think his great offense is he is unapologetically black. He's unapologetic. And there's no, and the original topic was, the original kind of forming of the topic was Jim Crow. He is unapologetic. He refuses to be ruffled. Okay, he refuses to become part of the establishment, to be accepted. He's an unapologetic man, and I think that's what America cannot stand.
Well,
statement.
You heard it live on the Smoking Glass Hour from Miss Nikki Bedrick. I think all of us on here, we agree, regardless as to whether we agree with all of the decisions that he has made. Let's hope that America can look and come out on top. Let's hope that they don't allow the man that we call Donald Trump to destroy some of the things that have been built here up until 2016. We know that we've come through Jim Crow. We know that we've come through slavery. We know that we've come through apartheid and all of these other evil systems that exist, institutionalization, the prison system, all of these other things, walking in the back door, drinking out of different water fountains. We continue to see people make justification and say, well, I didn't do that and nobody in my family did. But when you look around and most people check their genealogy, they find out some things that are alarming. We're looking at about 8:56 p.m. Central Standard Time. You listen to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass, joined tonight by Nikki Bedrick, Dave Lamont, and Aaron Hopkins. Tonight's topic, a lack of respect for the president has created a beast known as Donald Trump. So let's hope that many people go out and cast a vote to dump Trump, and I literally mean dump Trump. Nikki, thanks. Dave, thanks. And Aaron Hopkins, thanks. Good night.
Thank you, Baron. Dave, Aaron, good night.
Good night, everybody.